Max Payne is a 2001 story action-adventure noir game made by the relatively unknown at the time Remedy Entertainment and published by Gathering of Developers, aka the same guys that published Mafia 1. So we're off to a promising start already. The game itself was dreamt up by Remedy Entertainment sometime in 1996, inspired by the success of games like Tomb Raider and hard-boiled cop action films of the 70s and 80s. So they started making their own game engine, Max FX, writing and rewriting the story, composing original soundtracks, going to New York to get authentic textures and references, and pushing everything to the max. Pun intended. The game even got a big revamp in 2000, changing the story, improving graphics and lighting among other things. Interestingly enough, the face of Max Payne in the game is none other than Sam Lake, the main writer and creative director of Remedy Entertainment, even when taking dozens of references for details like death animations or leaps in all directions. He got into character. He plays him in the comic cutscenes as well, which not only leave more room for the player to interpret with their imagination, but also feature many people who are either relatives or members of the development team.
For example, Nicole Horn is actually real-life mother of Sam Lake.
Since at the time they couldn't afford real actors, much like the first Resident Evil game.
No! Don't go!
However, despite these limitations, a lot of the game still looks great, due to them only using the bare minimum on areas you don't see, saving on performance and giving them more space to make the areas you do rush around in a lot better, and emphasizing the gritty urban setting of the game. Moving on to the story, you play through this game much like a film. It has many cutscenes and characters, but to say the least, official game studios would probably not make a game this edgy today. Can you name a game with a baby corpse?
No, please God, no.
I'll wait 10 seconds. The prologue takes place in 1998, but the rest of the game takes place in 2001, and you can tell it's 2001 because the World Trade Center is still in the New York skyline and being featured prominently by any media set there ever. Anyway, meet Max Payne, a police officer living in the American dream till a tragic break-in results in the death of his wife and daughter.
No!
Cut to 3 years later, where him and his buddy are investigating a new type of drug that's spread across the city. However, just as you're getting close, you get framed for a bank robbery and the murder of your dear friend. Now, to clear your name and get revenge, you must rampage through dozens of criminals littered around New York and question one guy who works for another guy who works for another guy who works for a woman, with Max having more one-liners along the way than Black Mesa has aliens.
It was an impressive floor show, but I decided to leave early anyway. It was only a one-story fall. Lucky me.
A greatly cool thing about the game is that unlike the GTA games, it's all set in believable, realistic places with real things, such as them poking fun at Microsoft.
Worried experts already see a danger in the company's success. Some have gone as far as to say that Acer Corporation is about to become an even bigger monopoly than Microsoft ever was.
Vladimir's Mercedes or Roscoe Street Station, which is based on the 149th Street Grand Concourse in South Bronx. It convinced me it was a real place the first time I played it till I looked it up. The game is split into 3 different parts, with each part having about 9 sub-chapters. All the parts have at least one prologue sequence where the game takes a turn for the horror, with some genuinely creepy vibes and imagery you might see in something like Cry of Fear. All levels aren't too long, with only a few exceeding the 10-minute mark, which really helps sell the fast-paced gameplay and keep it from going dull and boring at the same time. Speaking of which, the gameplay. Boy oh boy, do I have some good news for action enthusiasts. As I mentioned earlier, the game borrows many elements of crime and cop movies of the 1980s, as well as the slow-motion CGI-induced scenes of the late 90s and early 2000s, with examples like The Matrix popping up quite a bit. The gameplay for the most part is pretty smooth, isn't too hard, more than it even comes with a developer console for everyone who would either like to try the game with some sneaky cheats, explore hidden areas and find Easter eggs, which there are a ton of, or take cinematics just as the one in the beginning of this video. The controls are well balanced for the most part. It comes with a quick save option, which comes in useful in hairy situations, a fairly decent selection of weapons, but by far, the best feature of the gameplay is bullet time. Just like the movies, once you activate, this time slows down and you either leap through the air in slow motion or get a Deadeye style shot on everyone. It's not only a convenient gameplay feature, it's also extremely fun to pull, with you coming out of it feeling almost as badass as Max, since you probably just slaughtered all the enemies in a matter of seconds. It is a great feature that many have tried to replicate, but very few have succeeded. Taking in some time in the slow-mo seconds, we can appreciate the environmental details. You can interact with pretty much everything in the game, and when I say everything, I mean it. You can get a Coke can from a machine, and sometimes you'll find some extra ammo as a reward for checking closets. You could even flush a toilet. Suck on that, Half-Life 2. It's a great level of detail for something 80% of players are going to miss on their first playthroughs. It's also a relatively mod-friendly game, since it doesn't have a Steam Workshop, but there's a fair amount of mods for it, such as the Kung Fu mod, which turns you into Bruce freaking Lee. As I said before a lot, this game takes place in pretty gritty urban environments, where you slowly work your way up to more professional places, with the final levels taking place in a big open prime condition corporate building. These locations really give off a strong atmosphere that you just wouldn't get from something all polished and nice looking. They are ugly, dirty and used up, and this style is utilized really well in games such as Kane and Lynch 2 or Half-Life 2 or Max Payne 3 for that matter. But I think it works much better than the at the time almost typical long hallways and confusing layouts like a maze in games such as Doom. There's a few puzzles, but even an idiot like me could figure them out, so they shouldn't be too much trouble. And finally, the music. The score for this game is great and is a blend of technological rock and industrial electro. Each scenario has a hand-picked soundtrack to have or not have music, and when it does play, it'll only be for a few seconds, but it makes you feel invincible, or in the nightmare scenes, extremely vulnerable, and works really well. Here, I'll show you what I mean. And well, that rounds it off nicely. Even though this game is old enough to drink in the US, it still holds up in the most aspects that can be appreciated. And with that, thank you for watching, and this is me signing off.